their career was a different era of aviation. I think what Connor said is more in line of the sense of they would have done the same thing if they had the opportunity. They came through their career at a more difficult time in the industry. A lot more furloughs, mergers, acquisitions, failures. So there was a lot more struggle. It doesn't necessarily make them better for having suffered through that. It doesn't make it worse. It's just different. They had a different upbringing in this industry and a different career in this industry. This is a big thing that I talk with Vince about this a lot, and a few of my other more um, older friends in the industry. They quote unquote suffered through that. I'm using air quotes at the time because that's what they loved it so much that they were willing to make those sacrifices, no matter what it took, to be able to fly these jets as an corporate or airline guy or whatever. Those were the decisions they had to make to do the job they loved. Nowadays, it's a lot easier to do that. I'm not saying it's a walk in the park, but it is a lot easier if you want to get into the industry now. Yes, the cost is more expensive for training, but there are a lot more jobs available than there were back in the day. And as we move further away from deregulation, there's more seats available in the industry. I'm thinking more 121 minded here, but there's going to be more jobs available because they're going to be flying more airplanes and the traveling public's able to afford it more. Back in the 90s, that was pretty recent. Deregulation was what, 78 or something like that. So like the airlines were still trying to ramp up their general public flying, making it affordable. Southwest, I think, was the first big one with their fuel hedging where they were able to drop the prices pretty dramatically so that just your average person who would never fly before can now afford to fly. We're kind of at this weird point in the industry where ticket prices are so low that anybody can afford to fly, whereas 20 years ago, a lot of those people couldn't afford to get on an airplane. So the whole point of that, to tie it all back together, is there's a lot more jobs available now because a lot more people are flying than they were back when these guys were coming up. Their struggles, yeah, you're right, John. You have a point of after X amount of years of suffering, when are you going to decide to keep doing that or not? And you're right. They made the choice to keep doing it because they loved their job and they couldn't imagine doing anything else. So you got to give them some grace and understanding in that point is that, they made the decision to continue to quote unquote suffer, but it was for, because they genuinely loved what they were doing. A lot of those guys, they would still be doing it today, even if they weren't making the amazing amount of money you can make nowadays, because that's how much they're passionate about it. There's a lot of kids in the industry nowadays that would not be doing it if they were not making as much money as they are right now. If I told you as a regional airline captain, you're going to make $32 an hour, and then when you go to
No, I want to do it.
you wouldn't do it.
Just be honest.
And that's the
I can't support a family, so I'm not going to choose the job over the family. So that's my point of view.
That's the point I'm trying to make. And the difference is these guys did it for the passion and the love
No,
of the industry, and they would do whatever it took to fly, and they figured out how to make it work, for their families. A lot of people today wouldn't do that. And so I think
no,
that's the big differentiator. They're not necessarily at fault for having suffered through all that stuff because that was just the industry at the time when they were coming up, and it's a lot easier now. So it's understandable why they might feel a little bitter about it because, they did have to suffer through a lot of crap to get here. But now, if they had to do it all over again and it was like it is today, they would take advantage of this opportunity as well. Every time I've confronted one of these guys, they've agreed with that. Tip for the listeners, if you're an FO or somebody newer flying with an older, bitter guy, and he's bitching about it, just say, hey, and he asks you a question. If you had the opportunity that I have today and it was this easy for you, would you be doing it? And I guarantee you he's going to say, hell yeah, I would. And that'll hopefully calm him down a little bit.